It is true that Canada takes pride in its multicultural society. However, this wasn't achieved without many painful wounds. Canada multiculturalism is a positive element which is projected to the rest of the world, but history shows a different truth. Canada has rejected simply too many minority groups, including those from Chinese to Indian descent and Jewish people. Our government turned away the people that helped us build a major transportation system. Our government turned away the ones that were trying to seek a better life in this peaceful land. Most importantly, our government turned away the people that settled here first and had been thriving for thousands of years. In particular, one decision from our government had a crucial impact on the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. One must understand that not only did restrictive government policies harm children who attended residential school from the 1820 to 1990s, but the generation that followed them continue to suffer to this day. Understanding how to maintain good mental health is something that all young people must learn. However, 3 out of 4 Indigenous kids and teens struggle with mental health issues in Canada. Since 2003, the percentage has only been increasing rather than decreasing. Various strategies has been applied by government bodies to attempt to solve this problem. However, we need to get to the actual real root of these issues. One Métis teen states that for us, mental health problem is like a loop, one that you can never get out of. Why is this problem so cyclical? Why are young people today still struggle with the same problem as their parents or grandparents? The answer to these questions connect directly to the residential school systems. It makes sense that if we have generations of traumatized adults who lack sufficient support for their personal issues, that their children absorb these unhealthy behaviors and shared sorrows. Furthermore, unfortunately, the suicide rates in cities such as Attawaspikit have become a crisis due to a lack of mental health care. Many individuals of the communities combat this problem by living in a virtual world. This is achieved by a high consumption of drugs and alcohol. According to Statistics Canada, approximately 50% of Indigenous children from 12 to 15 drink alcohol on a regular basis. This is unacceptable, and we as a nation must ensure that all citizens have the tools to live a healthy and stable life. The Indigenous people have always been faced with the problem of racial segregation and alienization by our society. This is evident from the percentage that the First Nation take up in the prison system in Canada. While Indigenous people represent 4.3% of Canada's population, more than 25% of the prisoners in Canada are First Nations. With inadequate support from the government and their communities, it makes it much more likely for them to resort illegal actions to sustain a reasonable quality of life. According to the CBC News, 1 in every 6 First Nations do not have access to clean drinking water. The legacy of residential schools is not only visible in the resulting of having insufficient healthcare and low socioeconomic status, but also a break in one's culture. As our modern society develops, the First Nation rarely gain any benefits from it. In fact, their cultural practices and identities seems to be diminished throughout this process. One must not ignore the damaging connection between the loss of one's sacred history and poor mental health. But what can really be done about these systematic issues? The Here to Help organization in Canada have come up with a long-term solution. In order to permanently solve the problem, the first action that needs to be taken is better education and more funding towards schools in general, and by giving extra funding to Indigenous families. Unlike what Premier Doug Ford is suggesting, by cutting funds to schools, it is making it even harder for Ontario students to receive proper education, which ultimately leads to a new cycle of depression and poses problems for the next generation. However, that is not the only solution. Here are 2 more. First, report on areas with the lowest Indigenous satisfaction rate based on standards of living. Second, dramatically increase funding in areas that suffer from depression the most. The co-founder of Here to Help asserts that Canada is in a state of emergency and we cannot afford any more experiments. Just today, June 3, 2019, the case regarding the missing and murdered Indigenous woman have finally been properly addressed. After more than 3 years and around 2,000 Canadians were missing or murdered, the problem have finally been shown to citizens. Without giving more attention and support to the Indigenous population, their daily life quality is only going to slide downhill over time. Our government have once abandoned the First Nation like a chick into the harsh world of competition. It is only becoming weaker as time passes by. If our current government can provide the support and shelter that the chick needs, it is still not too late to properly raise it and turn it into the eagle that once soared the precious land of this continent.